Up till that point in my life, I just did the things that people expected from me. And so I decided from now on, I'm gonna do what I like. And even if the whole world, everybody's telling me, no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this or that, I'm gonna do it if I wanna do it. There was a very powerful decision which has pushed me forward still up till now.
Okay, so welcome everyone. We're here at Zoko with Meditation Amsterdam, and today we have a special guest, which is my friend Arno. And Arno is has been kind enough to agree to talk to us today on the very special subject of Pranayama. And for those of you who are not familiar with Arno's work, Arno is, I would say, probably one of the top 3 or top 5 foremost experts of Pranayama and yogic breath in Holland. And so we're setting the bar pretty high.
Okay.
We
yes.
found, so I found Arno through the Yoga Delight yoga studio. And I have dropped his name a few times. And my understanding is that your last name is Van Veen.
Ten Veen.
Ten Veen. But in Yoga Delight, you probably don't know this, but they call you Arno Pranayama.
Really?
Yes. So,
well, that's a great nickname.
That is a great nickname.
I like it.
So
really.
he's known as Arno Pranayama, and I can attest to the let's say the validity of that nickname.
Nice.
And so Arno has coached me a few times on yogic breath, but I thought it would be good to start by telling us a little bit about your path so far, because I think that you've been doing this for some 30 years or so.
Almost 30 years now, yeah.
And I think it would be good for people to know why you started, how you got started, and what that journey has been like, more or less, as an intro into our chat.
Yeah, good. All right. So well, I started like a lot of people start their self-exploration. I was having a burnout. At that time, 30 years ago, it wasn't even called a burnout. It was called overspannen for the Dutch listeners. But it was a burnout, yeah. I did a study, I didn't like it. I never liked school, but you know, I was going in the way I was supposed to go in my life. And at some point, I just got completely stuck with that. I couldn't study the books anymore. I couldn't take in any information anymore. And I felt very lost in life, actually. I thought, what is this all about? What am I doing? Just, filling up to the expectations of other people, of my parents, of the peers, and so on. So I got really stuck with myself.
And your system
stressed.
was kind of resisting this, of course.
My system was resisting. I was a very bad student. I was partying all the time, just not to feel what was really happening inside. I was partying, I was taking drugs. I mean, basically smoking marijuana and drinking a lot of alcohol. And at some point, nothing functioned anymore. So then I had to do some real self-investigating work, and I dropped out of school at some point. To make the long story short, I dropped out of school and decided that I was going to do whatever I really liked, because I felt up till that point in my life, I think I was 22, 23, up till that point in my life, I just did the things that people expected from me. And so I decided from now on, I'm gonna do what I like. And even if the whole world, everybody's telling me, no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this or that, I'm gonna do it if I wanna do it. There was a very powerful decision which has pushed me forward still up till now.
Yes.
So that's what I did, and then I try to find something in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual part of society, because from when I was 16, I started meditating. So that part I did already quite a lot.
Was meditation already popular at the time, or were you one of those first people who had started to look into it?
Well, I wouldn't say I was a pioneer, but there were many pioneers way before me also. But it was a book called The Alpha Mind Control Method. And I found it in the library when I was about 16, and it was very clear how to do it. And I just practiced it all by myself. And I had amazing experiences when I was 16.
Wow.
And it really helped me to get rid of my weekend headaches. At that point I already had those kind of symptoms.
Yeah.
You know, and so it gave me a lot of relaxation and self-control. And now I lost a little bit my flow, but...
you were talking about how the burnout led to looking into a different way of...
Yes, so I was already a bit connected with spirituality and meditation, so when I stopped the normal mainstream education, I decided, okay, I have to look into the alternative parts, the spiritual parts. I want to explore there. So I found a center, a health center. It was an alternative health center in the city I was living at that point. It was in Enschede, east of the country. And I just went there. I just called the bell, you know, I pushed the bell there at the front door. Said, hey, hello, here I am. This is my name, I am Arno, and I want to look what is there for me in the spiritual scene. Can I be a volunteer in your center?
Wow.
Can I be volunteering and just, you know, meeting people and exploring this whole new thing?
Just like that?
Just like that.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, come in, have a cup of tea. And I immediately felt at home and welcomed and so on. And I mean, I saw in a little book that they gave yoga and Tai Chi there. I didn't know anything about the breath. But it turned out that this center was a rebirthing center. And rebirthing is the breathing technique.
Yes.
It is the new pranayama. There's the traditional pranayama, maybe we come to that later, but it is the new pranayama. Babaji called it the new pranayama. It is exactly opposite from traditional pranayama, actually, which I will explain later.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I didn't know anything about the breath. I didn't come there for the breath. And then I was cleaning the corridors, you know, or vacuum cleaning or whatever I was doing there as a volunteer. I also did some administrative work. And then I heard people screaming and crying in their rebirthing sessions. There were 3 individual rebirthing rooms there.
Yes.
There were 3 therapists there. And it scared the hell out of me. I thought, well, this is not for me, this is too much.
Intense.
I will do my yoga,
Yes.
I will do my Tai Chi, and I will be fine.
Right.
But it wasn't true. 3 months later, I was still as stressed as when I came in. And then they had like an open day, like an proof session, how you say it, a tryout session. And I decided to go for it. And in that session, my first breathing session ever, I got into total cramps and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, my mouth was cramped, my tongue, my whole body. It was a mirroring of what was really happening inside. And in a breathing session, as you know, everything is amplified under a magnifying glass. So it was an intense experience. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience, and it was very confronting as well. But I felt, wow, this is going to help me, and it's going to help me like a rocket, like full on, quick.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I got into contact with breathing, and it stayed with me forever.
So the first thing that comes to mind when you're mentioning these things is how much we underestimate how powerful these techniques can be.
Yeah.
And that would have been me say before walking into your home, which is where you kept your practice at the time. I remember we got in touch because I wanted to just check if I was doing pranayama correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was into alternate nostril breathing, and I was maybe doing a little bit of breath retention, but not that much at the time.
Yeah.
And I wrote a long list of technical questions.
Oh,
I was very concerned about
whether
I was technically doing the right thing or not.
Yeah. I had to answer all those questions before you ever came to me.
Yes. So I remember coming over with extremely basic understanding of what this was all about, and walking out with my mind having been blown, and for me thinking, I got more than I bargained for here, because that session that you and I had was to me the first time that I realized not just the power, but the meaning behind some of the limbs of the yoga method.
Right.
So if I was to paint a picture of the most basic understanding of yoga, on the far low side, you could say that it's people saying, "I'll do yoga once a week. It relaxes me." Right?
Which is great.
Which is great.
It's fantastic. Keep doing it,
yes,
people. Keep
absolutely.
doing it.
Nothing
But we want you to do more.
Yes, exactly.
Preferably, you know.
So we're on a mission, absolutely, and so that is a very, very basic, but also very gross, very superficial understanding of yoga. And then as you progress, you get a little bit more maybe into meditation and so on. But to have your first glimpse at energy flowing in a certain way in your body, that is a completely different thing.
That is the red pill. You know, I call sometimes the breath work the red pill. Mm-hmm. If you do a really strong session, it's a red pill, like in the Matrix movie.
Absolutely.
You cannot come back to your old beliefs anymore.
No. And that rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper as well, right? Because that first session was, I thought, wow.
Yeah.
But it was not that well, considering how far you can go later down the line, both in intensity but also in depth of these experiences and so on.
Yeah, it took you a while to come back also.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Took you quite a while to digest maybe what happened there.
Yeah. Like you say, during these sessions, everything is magnified. But apart from the intensity of it, there was certain moments of what you could call it emotional release, which were very natural and very beautiful. It was so liberating, and I remember we've done this a few times, right? I think we've had something like 5 sessions or 6, and I remember during one of them, I was sort of laughing and crying at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And I said to you something like, "How silly of me. Why have I been holding on to all of this? I now realize that it can just flow." But it was not a conceptual realization. It was really, I knew it. I could feel it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought, and I also remember saying to you that the world needs this, Arno. This is the solution. This is amazing. And maybe I was also feeling a little bit high. God knows what the brain is doing chemically during these experiences. Of course.
A lot.
But they are quite transformative. I don't think that no matter how intense an experience you can have in daily life, I think that these are sort of super conscious experiences, right? You are going a level above or to what you can experience on your daily life.
Yeah.
So how about going a little bit into this rebirth? Because I know that out of all the pranayama techniques that are out there and the ones that you've practiced in the past, you have really focused on rebirth.
Yes, this is my main
as your core
technique. Yeah, for almost 30 years now. And of course, over time, I've also started to do some pranayamas, like the traditional pranayamas from the yoga. And but they are actually much more difficult. I find the rebirthing the most simple, easy to practice technique and the most healing technique. Mm-hmm. And healing, I think, especially for the people of this time. We are so uber controlled in our society. people are so uber controlled, they do not allow a free expression of anything. Whether it's laughing, whether it's crying, whether it's anger, whether it's sexuality, it's all tabooed. Every expression of which would come natural is tabooed down, you know, is repressed. And so the rebirthing breath, which is also called conscious connected breathing, which I will explain in a few moments, it's also called circular breathing in these days. People come up with new names and then, you know, act as if it's their own almost invention.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of the breathing techniques that are out there, also like transformational breathing, the core of it is the conscious connected breathing. Conscious means with your full awareness, you're breathing with full awareness, full attention. And connected means you're taking away the pauses between inhale and exhale and inhale. Yeah.
So you're doing these smooth full circles of breath.
A very fluent breath circles, breath waves, they never stop. And so this brings us to the term subventilation. People know about hyperventilation. And hyperventilation is this high, fast breathing.
Up here in the chest.
High up in the chest, which comes from anxiety and fear, but it also creates anxiety and fear.
Right.
But underneath is a whole different breathing pattern, which is called subventilation. Subventilation is underbreathing. Hyperventilation is overbreathing. Yeah? So I will explain. Underbreathing means if this would be our full expansion of the lungs and contraction of the lungs, on each inhale expansion, each exhale contraction, we have minimized it to a very small breath movement. We take in just a little bit of air on the inhale and we expel a little bit of air on the exhale. This is to stay safe in our minds, yeah? To stay safe. You don't take in too much, so you're not being touched too much by what is happening outside of you. And you're not releasing or expressing too much, so you're staying all on the safe side. But if this would be our full maximum breathing potential, we have minimized it in our day-to-day life towards, these days, the last few years, I say 20%.
So this is interesting because you've made a connection already that goes beyond what most people consider to be the case, and that is, you're saying that the way in which we're approaching life is very highly connected to the way in which we breathe.
Oh,
so
yeah.
these limitations, I'm not going to take too much of it in because it's overwhelming. I'm not going to give away too much because I don't feel like I can express that. That is reflected also in the way that we are
breathing,
underutilizing our breathing potential.
Yes.
And I suppose that the opposite applies as well, that if you modify the way you breathe, then your life begins to expand in a certain way.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Perfectly. Yes.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
So
there's two things that I need to explain about the subventilation and the rebirthing breath. So we minimize the breath when we feel overwhelmed, you said it, when we are fearful, when our partner is angry with us for whatever reason, when we have to come to our boss who needs to talk with us. We find 101 reasons every day to be a bit scared, to be afraid of being overwhelmed, of not being able to deal with somebody else's emotions or our own. And what do? We minimize the breath. Then we do a second thing. We also hold the breath at many points. So a lot of people hold the breath after the inhale. And then at some point they realize they need to release a little bit, you know. But this is staying on top of things. At least you think in your mind you're on top of things. And a lot of people hold the breath after the exhale, so they are, kind of in a very down feeling. Here I'm up, here I'm down. Yeah. So.
And both are dysfunctional breathing patterns.
Exactly. And both are patterns that we use. They are survival strategies. So we must recognize them for what they are and for what they have brought us, because they have helped us to survive in this crazy society that we live in.
And do you think that this is also a reflection of how ready we feel to deal with certain things? Because there is something to be said about, have you built the resilience to live life, let's say, in a fully open way?
Yeah.
And maybe in your system or in the back of your head, you know that you're not ready for certain things. So then you reflect that in the breath and you protect yourself as well.
Yeah. We're very protective. We're not open at all. In our mind, maybe we like to connect, but in our hearts, we find it very difficult. In our bellies, we find it very difficult to connect with the whole being of you, to allow your energy to touch my energy body, to really feel you, to take you in totally is quite something else than to connect with you on a mind level.
Right.
Yeah, we're all there in this mind level. The whole energy is high, the whole breath is high. So those are the two elements of subventilation. So what rebirthing does, it breaks those patterns.
Right.
So first of all, when I work with people, whether it's individual or in workshops, I have always the intention to break the subventilation pattern. So, which means to breathe as full as they can. I mean, there's many details to the breath and how to build it up from bottom to middle to top. There's a lot of details, but basically I want people to breathe more, meaning to inhale more, to fill their lungs more up with oxygen and with prana, because we breathe prana, life force, right?
Would you call this the full yogic breath? Is that
yes,
a good way to understand it?
Which I have never learned in the rebirthing scene or from my rebirthing teachers, but later in yoga I've learned a bit about full yogic breath, and I've explored it for myself a lot. And basically it's the same, but yogic people, they are somehow very scientific. It's very nice sometimes.
Yes.
They want to know all the details. If you do a pose or if you do a pranayama, you apply the right techniques step by step. It's very scientific, it's very beautiful.
It is. Well, it is one of the things, there's two aspects to that. The precision of it that you mentioned was to me quite an amazing thing, because in our sessions, I have noticed the most minute changes suddenly trigger something completely unexpected. And that could be a certain emotion or a certain emotional release, or my body will start shaking in a certain kind of way, or it will calm down. But the changes are so minute that it's almost, we really don't understand the subtlety of it unless you've experienced it, and really
infinitely subtle.
We are not calibrated to feel that on that level.
No.
We're moving in a very gross world, right? So we are looking at big things, and it takes a lot for our attention to be captured. But the subtlety of the breathing techniques that you taught me so far, I was surprised by just how tiny the changes need to be for a certain effect to take place. And the other one, and this is one of the things that I also love about the yoga method in general, is that it is indeed a scientific method. It might not yet conform to many Western scientific standards, but the way in which they approach things is methodical and just mathematical, right? They don't leave much to chance, as far as I can tell.
Depending a little bit on the form and the style of yoga that you practice, we have more modern styles now. But even behind the modern styles,
there's beer yoga nowadays as well.
Beer yoga, but there's naked yoga, people. For those who like it, crazy.
Yes, absolutely.